Unity has announced some changes to its fees and product tiers which have infuriated the game development community and caused many to start seeking alternate game engines, such as Godot and Unreal, for their projects. Is that a valid response, or is this the reactionary, sensationalist, overblown panic-mongering that we too often see in games reporting and social media? Something you might not know about me is that I am an indie game developer. For the past 18 months or so, I have been developing a top-down pixel art shooter called Crisis Island during my evenings and weekends. I have heavily invested in courses to learn both C# and Unity, buying tools such as Sprite, and registering everything with not only His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, but also Steam. I have seen my game go from a character running around a blue void to exhibiting a demo at the One Life Left video game convention in April, to now acting on those players' feedback before releasing a public demo in the very near future. As of this week, I even got invited to apply for Steam Next Fest. As you can imagine, I'm too far into the project to switch engines. Having just gotten the hang of Unity and C#, I have little appetite to start over with a different language, editor, and interface. I've had to seriously consider what these changes are, how they will impact me, and what my next steps will be. In this video, we'll discuss what Unity has actually announced, what the impact is for developers of various sizes, why people are so upset, and whether Unity is still a viable game engine. Unity is introducing a Unity runtime fee per initial game install for titles that earn more than $200,000 within a 12-month period, and see more than 200,000 installs during the game's lifetime. This fee, and its thresholds, vary depending on which Unity license you have and where in the world you're based. That leads us nicely to the other change, which is the removal of Unity Plus. This was a €369 per year stepping stone for developers who were no longer small-scale hobbyists, but not yet an established sizable studio. With its removal, you now have to choose between the free Unity Personal or the €1,877 per year Unity Pro. For those happily on Plus, while they are being offered a year of Pro at Plus's price, that's a massive jump in annual fees. It's worth noting that this is still a developing story, and some of these changes have already, changed. Part of the reason I've waited a day or two before even writing this video was to see if this would be the case. In the initial announcement, the Unity runtime fee was going to be per install. This was quickly walked back to only be the initial install. Under the original announcement, a customer could buy your game once, install it on 3 different devices, for example their desktop PC, their laptop, and their Steam Deck, and you would be charged 3 times. That raised concerns about install bombing, people maliciously uninstalling and reinstalling your game over and over again to rack up a huge bill for you, especially as Unity offered no transparency on how they were identifying an install or where those metrics were coming from. There would be nothing stopping them saying, "Here's a bill for the 300,000 installs we say that you had. Take our word for it." There were also questions about releasing games into Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, or Humble Bundle. What about demos, charity games, and free-to-play titles? Could there be instances where the runtime fee actually causes a developer to make a loss? We've had answers to some of this, and it's kind of laughable. Supposedly, for Game Pass and PlayStation Plus titles, Unity will build a subscription vendor, i.e. Microsoft and Sony, not the game's developer or publisher. Good luck enforcing that. The biggest issue with the announcement, which seems to still be in play as of writing, is that this is a retroactive agreement. It would also be applied to all games made using Unity that have already been released. Besides being morally bankrupt, it also has people questioning if that's even legal. That's not the agreement people signed up to. Imagine buying a car, and then 3 years later the dealership calls you saying that they now want a $5 for every 100 miles you drive in that car. I imagine most of us would respond with 2 words, and the second would be off. Overall, it feels very Darth Vader, not a comparison anyone once made about them.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
There's also the small detail of Unity's CEO selling 2,000 of their shares in Unity on September 6th, less than a week before this announcement, indicating that their executive committee knew that this announcement would be unpopular. Some are questioning whether that amounts to market abuse and insider trading, criminal offences in many parts of the world. I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that one.
I'll just put this over here with the rest of the file.
In terms of assessing the impact, I'm going to start with what I know, which is me, myself, and I. I intend to sell my game, Crisis Island, please wishlist it, for $7.99 GBP. Steam takes a 30% cut on sales, totaling less than $10 million US, so I would receive £5.59 GBP in revenue per full price sale. The threshold for a Unity personal developer, that's me, is $200,000 US of revenue in a 12-month period, and 200,000 installs. Now, while learning C#, I have learned, the hard way, the important difference between saying and saying or. Converting £5.59 GBP to USD at today's exchange rate, that's $6.98 US revenue, not profit, revenue, per sale. To make more than $200,000 US in a 12-month period, I would need to sell 28,654 copies of Crisis Island. With Unity's clarification that only the first install will generate a fee, and giving a 10% margin of error, that still leaves me 168,480 installs, or 168,480 sales, before I would meet the second criteria. 200,000 installs. Remember, it's 200,000 US revenue and 200,000 installs to be eligible to start paying the fee, and even then, only on future installs above and beyond that 200,000 installs threshold. After doing the maths, I had 2 responses. 1, I don't expect to sell 200,000 copies. Not even close. 2, if I did somehow meet both criteria, by the time I had done so, I would have made $1,396,000 US, or £1,118,038.79 GBP in revenue by that point. Granted, revenue is not profit. There would be tax, costs, etc. to deduct from that figure, but we'd still be talking pay off my mortgage and quit, or at least go part-time at my day job kind of money, before owing Unity a penny. In that hypothetical scenario, which I don't reasonably expect to achieve, Unity want a contribution after that point as thanks for their software enabling that life-changing success. Sure, that seems fair to me. Where it could hurt me is if I were to look for a publisher or a partner to bring the game to PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. Knowing Unity has this runtime fee could cause them to consider the partnership higher risk, and or offer me less favourable terms in any contracts. For larger developers on pro and industry licenses of €1,877 per seat per year and €4,544 per seat per year respectively, although if they're bulk purchasing for larger teams they're likely paying less than that, who are releasing games in the $39.99 US to $69.99 USD region, it's likely a non-issue. 200,000 installs at $39.99 US, which is $27.99 in revenue per sale after Steam take their share, equates to $5,598,000 US, while the same for a $69.99 USD, $48.99 in revenue post-Steam split is $9,798,000 US. From that point, pro users are charged between 15 cents and 2 cents USD per install, and Enterprise, which isn't the same as Industry, but hey, an industry figure isn't listed, are paying between 12.5 and 1 cent USD per install. Let's say a Unity game sells 1 million copies at $69.99 US under an industry license. That's $69,990,000 US pre-Steam split, and $48,993,000 in revenue post. What do you think they would have to pay in runtime fees? I worked it out to be just $42,500 US. If you've got a team of 100 developers, the game has taken 3 years to make, and we assume you haven't negotiated a bulk buy discount, your industry license has cost you $1,463,151 US. Yes, you can absolutely argue that you've given Unity more than enough money at that point, but the $42,500 USD runtime fee is a drop in the bucket comparatively. The developers this is going to really hurt sit somewhere in the middle. The developers that have graduated from bedroom hobbyists, but who aren't playing with the big boys, and that's the community that's making the most noise or considering moving their projects to other engines. Their games typically sell for a lower price, and they're more likely to be on a pro license rather than the enterprise or industry tiers, so they pay proportionately more than the larger companies, despite earning less and potentially still having staff salaries, office rent, and other expenses to pay. I can understand why they're saying that feels fundamentally unfair, and why they justifiably feel Unity are punishing them. I think this is less about what was announced and changed, and more how Unity went about it. There was little notice. This change was announced on 12 September 2023, and comes into effect from 1st of January 2024. It seemed very poorly thought through. The original per-install plan was rife for obvious abuse. The retroactive application was unfair and possibly illegal, and the CEO sold some of their own shares in Unity less than a week before, implying a lack of confidence and causing people to question if that sale broke insider trading laws. It has created a trust issue. If they're willing to pull this stunt, what else might they try to change in the future? Is this a partner that you want to work with? Are Unity's priorities aligned with those of their users? Do they serve us or their shareholders? They've shown their hand as yet another corporate who only care about the bottom line, not their user base or the art form. The reporting around it, be it on traditional news sites, social media, or here on YouTube, has been designed to stir people into a frenzy because that's what causes people to share the article, get more views, and ultimately earn more money. Personally, I have yet to see anyone sit down and break down the maths as I have done here. Maybe that's because, when you do step back and look at the numbers, it becomes a bit of a nothing burger. According to Unity themselves, and given the source I take this with a grain of salt, only 10% of Unity developers actually reach these thresholds and would be eligible for the runtime fee. For 90% of us, nothing changes. Yes, this is still bad news. There's an additional potential cost to consider when choosing to use Unity. However, I think the response has largely been emotional rather than being rational and logical. And I am hyper aware I am saying that as an autistic person. This is a prime example of tomorrow's fish and chip paper. News that causes a stir, yet is quickly forgotten about with little to no lasting impact. The only parts I think are outright unenforceable and will be laughed out of the room are the retroactive nature of the agreement, and naively thinking that they can just send Microsoft and Sony a bill for Game Pass and PlayStation Plus titles. Overall, I still think Unity is a great option when it comes to game engines. Sure, Godot and Unreal are also great propositions, and the best engine for you will depend on the game you want to make, your preferred workflow, and your assessment of the community, documentation, and support materials. If you're a hobbyist, a learner, or a bedroom developer, Unity is an excellent way to not only learn and practice game design, but to potentially release your first commercial product. It's a foot in the door that has launched careers and much-loved game franchises. If you're more established, it's still worth comparing the pros and cons of Unity with other game engines. How do the licensing, runtime fee, and other costs compare to, for example, paying Epic a 5% royalty for sales over $1 million USD for games made in Unreal? As with most things, it's not as cut and dry or black and white as it initially seems. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and joining my Patreon, as the amazing Crow, Tiny Jericho, Mr. Terry Chaos, Guma Spice, and Ducky Go already have. I'll see you all in the next video.